Amazon reviews can be the difference between your book getting lost in the shuffle and becoming a bestseller. Reviews boost a book's visibility and build credibility and trust with your readers, all while having a huge influence on the Amazon algorithm. Encouraging your readers to leave honest reviews is one of the best ways to leverage Amazon's platform. Today, we explore one first-time author's experience building and utilizing Amazon reviews to build their author brand. I'm super excited to have Ann Hansen with me, author of the book Buried Secrets, to talk about her experience getting nearly 750 reviews over the last 2 years since its initial release. Ann, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me. So Ann, please, I'd love for you to share with our viewers a little bit about your book and what inspired you to write it.
Buried Secrets is the true genealogical detective story about how I uncovered the hidden past that my grandparents took to their graves. When I finally unearthed their real identities, I learned that the stories they had told of their past was fiction that they had created to hide some disturbing facts about their past. After I made all these discoveries, my dad was the first one to say I should write a book. And I thought, I can do that. That's easy enough. I've been a journalist. I know how to write. So I embarked upon writing the book. Of course, I had absolutely no idea what I was getting into. So writing Buried Secrets ended up being an iterative, on again, off again process over the course of 15 years.
Wow, took you 15 years to finally get the book to out to the world.
I mean, there were certainly like periods of like a couple years where I did nothing on it. But
Sure.
yes, from when I first started seriously writing and getting Buried Secrets out to the world in the fall of 2022, yeah, it was 15 years.
Wow. Getting 750 reviews over a 2 year period is a feat that's typically left for people that are celebrities or famous or have big book deals. To be a first time indie author and be able to get 750 reviews on your book is quite the achievement. And as we mentioned, it helps you in the Amazon algorithm in many ways. And I'm sure you've seen the benefits of that. Did you start out with a large network or did you build that from scratch? What was kind of, let's talk a little bit about the process of what it takes to get 750 reviews on your book.
Yeah, I started from almost zero. I had a negligible social media presence. I had, 260 friends on Facebook who were all, actually my friends versus people I didn't know. And I had like a dormant Twitter account. So I knew, like at the very beginning, that even though my friends were incredibly supportive and helpful to me, I knew I was going to have to create a network. And so that is what I did. I mean, I tried a little bit of everything. My approach was see what works. If it works, great. If it doesn't, move on. So my first approach was to double down on the genealogy community. The audience for my book is readers of memoir and suspense, but there's so many books out there and so much competition for readers that I decided to focus on the genealogy angle as a way of bringing in readers. Because, of course, people who are interested in genealogy also are readers, and genealogists in general love a mystery. And, my life is a true life mystery. So the response from the genealogy community has been fantastic. And I also have to say, in my own personal network, people who I hadn't been in touch with for years kind of came out of the woodwork and supported my book.
So in talking about your friends and your personal network, one thing I hear from authors all the time is I don't want to bug my friends and my family and my coworkers about my book. There's this apprehension there to market to your personal network. Kind of what was your approach to that?
Well, I marketed it to my personal network. I actually, when the book first came out, we had a lovely launch party at my house. So we invited all of our local friends. So we had about, 30 people here. I gave them all a free copy of the book, autographed, of course. And I said, if you read it and like it, please, post a review on Amazon. In general, I think people don't mind being asked. Some will do it, some will not. And the other thing is, I found like friends would read the book and tell their family and friends about it. And then those family and friends would read it, and some of those would end up reviewing the book as well. So my personal network sort of multiplied in ways that I didn't expect.
So one of the things I tend to tell authors, and it sounds like you were the beneficiary of this, is by marketing to your personal network, whether it be friends, families, coworkers, etc. Number one, they believe in you and your success because they know you personally, right? And they want to see you succeed
Right.
as an author.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh
and
yeah.
exactly what happened was that exactly what was supposed to happen happened. They bought your book. Some left reviews, some didn't. But most importantly, is they took your book and suggested it to their networks as well.
Yes.
And
Yes,
that
that definitely
indeed, that
happened.
is truly the power of marketing to your personal network. Now, with that, did you have any kind of structure or way to engage with them? Did you have a plan?
I kind of winged it. I certainly, whenever I would go to a party, people ask me what I do. I would say I'm a writer. And they say, "Oh, what do you write?" And I would tell them about my genealogical mystery. And they'd be, "Oh, that sounds really interesting." I give them my card. But in terms of marketing to my personal network, I was relatively free form. When we get to the broader network, that's, when we'll come to that. I had a totally different process. But in terms of family and friends, friends of friends, I pretty much just sort of left it to the universe. I was putting out good vibes, asking for help, and people who read the book really loved it. And so I would say, hey, if you love it, I hope you'll, leave a review or, tell your family and friends about it. And people did that. But I was not particularly structured in terms of marketing to my personal network.
One of the things you mentioned that caught my attention was that no matter where you were marketing your book at events, at personal,
Oh, yeah.
personal
I was,
meetings with
yeah,
friends, relatives, things like
yeah,
that. And I'm what I always share with people is not in a pushy way, but just in a hey, here's what I do way.
yeah.
I'd love for you to check it out.
Oh, I would just like to add one thing to that.
Sure.
If I was at a party and, I gave my little blurb and people said, "Oh, that sounds really interesting," I would always make sure in relatively short order to turn the conversation back to them. You'd be amazed how many people have family stories about secrets so they could relate to me and my book.
So, Ann, did you have a specific plan in place for your marketing effort, or did the plan kind of evolve organically?
I did have a specific plan in place, and it evolved organically as I saw what did and did not work. For example, I initially thought that bookstores were going to be a key channel for distributing my book, but this did not prove to be true. Bookstores in general don't have the capacity to support independent authors. I did end up getting a couple copies of my book placed in some local independent bookstores on a consignment basis, and I did make some sales that way. But the numbers were relatively low compared to the other channels, such as Amazon, such as events. So yeah, it's very hard to get into bookstores. If you want to do that, I would say go with the local bookstore and offer your book to them on a consignment basis. And you may get a few sales, but again, I found that all the other areas that you and I have talked about, such as, email, Facebook, were far more important in selling books.
So thanks for sharing that, because one of the things I think the many of the first time or wannabe authors out there that might be watching this think is that bookstores are the end all, like that's the place where you sell your books, right? And
Right.
we do have some authors out there that have utilized their local bookstore segment and done very well with their books. But I think what you found, and this is a perfect example how every author's case is unique and different. You found that by spending your time in the other areas, such as speaking events and Zoom events and things like that, you got more better, quicker responses
Absolutely.
than through bookstores.
Absolutely.
So that's a very critical piece of information, I think, for aspiring authors is we're not saying bookstores is necessarily bad and or you can't make it in the bookstore. However, you have to find the things specifically that work for you.
Right. And if it works, great. If after a fair amount of effort you're seeing it's not working, live and learn and move on.
Move on. That's the best
Right,
piece of
right.
advice you can
Yeah.
give. Was there anything that worked out particularly well for you?
Oh, yeah. In terms of the personal network, I was always marketing, but being very judicious. However, there was another big piece of my marketing campaign, which is where I worked very systematically to build a network. I did a couple of things. The first thing I did was I compiled a giant email list. This was all publicly available emails for genealogy and history societies. And so I put them all in a spreadsheet. I categorized them by location and, a couple other little parameters. And then, so I ended up with an email list of thousands of emails. Secondly, I had a campaign where I pitched newspapers, genealogy influencers, and large genealogical publications. I I pitched these three groups for coverage and reviews. So here's a couple examples of how that worked. I pitched the Akron, Ohio Beacon Herald newspaper for a review. Akron, Ohio just happens to be where my dad grew up and my grandparents lived. And it took a lot of pushing and a lot of pitching, but I finally got a review in that paper. And so that, A, resulted in sales, but B, once I got this review, I sent out an email blast to genealogy and history societies in Ohio, quoting the review. And it was a great review. So I would quote the review and put in a link to the review. So I would send out, these email blasts, and then I would get more sales from the email blast. And then sometimes people in the email, I would always say that I'm available for presentations, either in person if possible or remotely. And then I'd also say, if you read and enjoy Buried Secrets, I hope you will post a review on Amazon.
Mhm.
And I would certainly, from these email blasts, get requests for presentations. And another example, I had a really positive review in, I'd say, probably the premier genealogy email newsletter in North America. I got a great review. So I sent out an email blast to all of the genealogy organizations on my list. So the original review would generate sales. In my email, I would get sales. B, I would always say, if you read and enjoy the book, please post a review. And then I would get requests for events from this.
Mhm.
And the last part is when I do events, you're usually working with an event organizer and they become your friend. You go back and forth about scheduling, about, various logistical details, about what kind of presentation is it going to be. Because I've done everything from very general presentations to actual like kind of educational seminars. So you work with these people and they become, part of your personal network. So it all becomes a very sort of positive, self-reinforcing circle where I would send out these email blasts. I'd get more sales from them. I get more reviews because people would enjoy the book. And then I would develop relationships with people that I did the presentations with. And speaking engagements also, whether they're in person or virtual, they also create buzz. Like I might do an in-person event and I just sold a handful of books at the event, but people would leave and often order the book later. So it was this circle of reinforcing activities and relationships that I think worked really well for me.
I wanted to take a moment out of today's video to remind everyone that the one constant in the world of self-publishing is that things are always changing. Now, we work with the most updated information we have at the time of every video release, but over time, trends, tools, and strategies can and often do change. That's why we encourage each of you to stay curious, do extra research, and ensure that you're working with the latest and greatest information out there. Remember, your story, your goals, and your journey are one of a kind. If you have questions or need advice tailored to your specific book project, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help. And hey, if you're finding our content valuable, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, ring that notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support inspires us to keep empowering indie authors just like you. Now let's get back to the video. So there's three really key takeaways from what you just told me. Number one, you do a fabulous job of asking everyone you engage with about your book to leave you a review on Amazon.
Yes,
I've heard that over and over and over. If
yes,
you
yes,
enjoy my book, please help me by leaving an Amazon review. So kudos for you there. Secondly, it by hitting the genealogy group, you found a very, very narrow niche. And so you had very specific groups you contacted, very specific people you wanted to reach out to. So, and I tell authors this all the time, the more you can narrow your niche down, the more successful you will be
yeah,
because you have those specific groups to get to. And
yeah,
the third takeaway that you mentioned, which I think is very cool, you made personal friends with a lot of
yes,
these people in the
absolutely.
genealogy world.
Yes,
So
yes.
not only were you marketing to, a larger group that you did not know, but now you've all of a sudden turned them into friends and
Into
added them into
friends.
your.
That was a very rewarding aspect of it. Actually, one thing I forgot to mention, but it relates to just sort of building relationships. In terms of social media and how this fit into my self reinforcing circle, I used Facebook the most, and I received a lot of support from a Facebook group called the Genealogical Crime Mystery Book Club. Again, to your point, this is a niche, but it is an extremely passionate, enthusiastic niche.
Right.
So this group has active members in the US, Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand. So whenever I got a positive review, I would do a little post in this group. And this group, they were just absolutely wonderful. I got a lot of sales from this, and if I would post something new, somebody who had read my book would say, I read and loved your book. I totally recommend it.
You found a very specific niche and you
Yes,
worked it very, very well. It sounds to me like you sent out a lot of emails and
yes,
you were getting speaking engagements, you were sending out books, you were inquiring about things, which is a lot of information coming at you at the same time. Can you talk a little bit about how you tracked and kept track of all these different things and different
yeah.
emails?
Two things. I had a giant spreadsheet with many, many columns where I would track who got what email. Although I should back up here a little bit to say, whenever I sent the email, I also put an unsubscribe link right in the email. So if somebody was not interested, they could just unsubscribe and they never hear from me again.
Sure.
So anyway, when I'm emailing people, I would have a column where I tracked, sent email on July 1st, sent email on August 15th. I also, if they unsubscribed, I had a column for people who unsubscribed. There was one tab where I tracked all of the emails that I sent to everyone. For
Mhm.
example, the Ohio email. There was another one, I got a really nice review in the Twin Cities Pioneer Press. So I sent an email to everybody in Minnesota about that. I tracked that. So, so I had a very systematic way of tracking, the emails that I sent.
And when you did talks and different events, did you also after the event go in and look at sales and see how
Oh
different
yeah.
things affected sales?
Oh yeah. Online of yeah, I in general I tracked my sales on Amazon very closely. So I would know, what was working and what maybe wasn't working as well. Like when I did virtual events via Zoom, people would there'd be a very precise cause and effect of you do the event, and then I would see a bump in sales right after the event. Obviously, sales at in-person events where you're, giving people paper copies of the book don't go into the Amazon algorithm or your Amazon sales. But in general, the most of my sales have been through Amazon. So I've been able to track it pretty closely via the author portal.
So you mentioned doing a lot of in-person events, virtual events. You mentioned you're on Facebook. Are you using other social media, or are those the only thing that you're using? And the reason I ask the question is because many authors believe they need to get on every social media platform out there. And it's my belief that do what you do best and kind of forget about the other stuff. Because if you try and join a social media platform that you just don't have your heart into, I don't feel like you're going to be successful at it.
Facebook was where I sort of had a comfort level. So, I mean, I do have an author Instagram page, which I've pretty much done nothing with. I also have a friend who's really into YouTube, helped me create a YouTube video, and I actually have a YouTube page, but I really have no presence there. It's important to be in an environment where you feel comfortable and you can be your authentic self. I never even really thought about getting into like TikTok because frankly my audience Gen X and older for the most part. But my audience overall is not on TikTok. They are on Facebook. I mean, I could do more potentially with Pinterest as well as with Instagram, but I just kind of felt like with the trifecta or quartet of email, events, Facebook, that I was reaching the people that I wanted to reach. That being said, there certainly is more networking that I want to do. My current goal, going into 2025, I want to market much more to book clubs. And that is pretty much word of mouth, however. I plan to contact all of the local churches, synagogues, other houses of worship, because often the largest ones have book clubs.
The key takeaway there is, you spent the first 2 years of your book really working and creating your, that network, your network and getting
Yes,
established in that network. And I love that you have a plan going forward, because now it's like, what's next? What's the next step
yeah,
in
yes.
my book marketing evolution? That's fantastic. And a great piece of advice for aspiring and first time authors out there. With that being said, can you give a few insights and help for those first time authors that are out there?
Well, my advice, like it starts with write the absolute best book that you can. Get unbiased professional feedback. Your family and friends are going to love everything you do. They can't help you write a better book. But once you've written the best book that you can, that's most authentic to you, then I would say, what is the angle that you have in your book that would make it stand out in the crowd? Yeah, whatever is unique about your book, there are groups of people out there who are interested in it.
And congratulations on your success. We are so thrilled that you've done what many people think can only be done by authors in the big publishing world. And that's just not the case. That's not to say it's not easy. You've worked it and you've worked it very hard. You've had some successes, you've had some failures, you've learned from your successes. You passed on the failures and moved on and found another way
Yeah,
to do it.
yeah.
In closing, do you have other projects that are in the work, or is this it? Was this it for you?
My book, is a narrative nonfiction book,
Mhm.
but it has a lot of imagined scenes on it that are based on real life. And I found I really and loved writing these imagined scenes. So I discovered there was a fiction writer in me that I didn't even know was there.
Aha.
I had always thought of myself as like a journalist, nonfiction writer, but I found that I really loved writing these imagined scenes. So if I write another book, I think it is going to be fiction and it's going to be a mystery and it's going to be based on my grandmother's family in the 19 teens and 1920s.
Hmm.
Because one of the things I discovered in researching my book was that my grandmother really had an extremely, I'd have to say, kind of dysfunctional, but really, really interesting family whose members all got up to all kinds of mischief. So I thought of writing a mystery based on the life of my grandmother's family in the 19 teens and 1920s.
Oh, sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
We'll look forward to that. And congratulations again on your success.
Thanks so much. I truly appreciate it. And I really enjoyed working with you and Victoria. And I'd have to put a shout out to Victoria. She did such a great job on the cover design, on the book layout, and you helped me a lot
I
in
believe
terms
your
of
book cover
advice.
is right,
Oh, my
right.
book
My
cover is right above your head. Yes,
and
very secret.
that was not done on purpose, by the way. That's been there all year. So I change these backgrounds out a couple of times a year to highlight and showcase different books. And I actually didn't even have the thought of, oh, I got to put Anne's book in the background, but there it is.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, but yeah, I really enjoyed working with both you and Victoria on this book. So thank you to you as well.